All right, let's just get right into it. As of today, October 27th, 2025, the U.S. is staring down a massive deadline in the middle of this ongoing government shutdown. And the big immediate threat? Well, food assistance for something like 40 million Americans is about to just disappear. The pressure's on.
And look, that's not some politician talking or a pundit on the news. That is the official word, straight from the U.S. Department of Agriculture's website. I mean, that's a pretty stark warning. And it signals a huge looming crisis for millions of families who literally depend on this aid to eat. So how many people are we actually talking about here? It's about 1 in every 8 Americans. That's the scale of what we're looking at. And as of November 1st, they are all set to be cut off, unless Washington can figure this out, and fast.
So let's really focus on this immediate crisis, right? The USDA, they've been totally clear about this. The money for November's SNAP benefits, it just hasn't been authorized. The whole program is basically about to slam into a brick wall.
Now, for anyone who's not familiar, what is SNAP? It stands for the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. But, for tens of millions of people, there's nothing supplemental about it. It's their entire food budget. It is literally the difference between having food on the table and going hungry. And this chart, this really shows you who's being affected. This isn't just some abstract government program. The data shows it supports our veterans, older adults, people with disabilities, and a ton of working families with kids. Basically, some of the most vulnerable people in the country are right in the crosshairs of this shutdown. Which, of course, brings us to the big question. How did we get here? Why is this happening? Well, the root cause is a political stalemate in Washington, a classic case of gridlock, but this time with really, really devastating consequences. So here's the bottom line, the real sticking point. On one side, you have the Democrats, and they're saying, look, we will not fund the government until we also talk about extending subsidies for the Affordable Care Act. On the other side, Republicans are saying, absolutely not. We have to reopen the government first, and then we can talk about other issues. It's a total impasse. So, from the Republican point of view, this is basically a manufactured crisis. The Senate Majority Leader, John Thune, is making the case that Democrats are dragging this out on purpose, not to actually get a deal done, but to turn it into a political weapon. But as you can imagine, Democrats see it completely differently. Senator Chris Murphy here is saying that a deal is right there for the taking. His argument is that if Republicans would just come to the table and negotiate, they could have the government open in a matter of days and avoid this whole food crisis entirely. But here's the thing. This goes way beyond just SNAP benefits. We're now 27 days into this shutdown, and it's sending these shockwaves all across the country, affecting everything from, say, your flight schedules to our national security. And just to put this into perspective for you, at 27 days, this is now officially the second longest government shutdown in U.S. history. And as you can see, it is creeping dangerously close to that all-time record of 34 days that was set just a few years back. And the effects are just spiraling outwards. We're talking about almost 500,000 federal workers who have now missed a full paycheck. Air travel is getting all tangled up because of staff shortages. Even military pay and the security of our nuclear stockpile are now at risk. And the real irony here, food banks are now having to serve the very federal employees who have been sent home without pay. This quote from an employee at the Department of Defense, wow, it just really hits you. It cuts right through all the political noise and just shows you the raw human cost of all this uncertainty. The anxiety people are feeling is so real, and it's just getting worse every single day. So you have to wonder, is there any kind of safety net, any backup plan at all? Well, that question brings us to a huge point of debate, a potential but super controversial idea to solve this SNAP crisis. This is the big question a lot of people are asking. The USDA has this emergency fund with about $5 billion in it. So why can't they just use that money to keep the benefits going? Well, as it turns out, it's not quite that simple. And this table really gets to the heart of the fight. On one side, you have advocates who are calling the shutdown a man-made disaster, and they argue the head of the USDA has the legal power to use this fund in an emergency like this. But on the other side, the USDA itself has put out a memo saying that fund is, quote, not legally available. They are insisting it's only for natural disasters, like a hurricane, not for political ones. So where does all of this leave us? Honestly, as the clock just keeps ticking down to November 1st, the future for millions of people is completely up in the air, with no clear way out of this mess. And it seems like the public agrees this isn't ending anytime soon. Just look at these betting odds from Polymarket. You've got a combined 83% of people who think this shutdown is going to drag on into mid-November, or maybe even later, well past the cutoff for SNAP benefits. Only a tiny 17% think it's going to end this week.
And, that pessimism, it feels pretty justified. There are no new funding votes scheduled in the Senate. Both sides really seem to be digging in their heels, and caught right in the middle of all this finger-pointing are millions of Americans just stuck in this terrible financial limbo.
Which leaves us with this one final, really critical question. The USDA itself actually used the phrase inflection point. So with food and paychecks and all these public services on the line, what is it going to take for Washington to finally hit that point and get this thing solved?